Hello, and thank you for inviting me to Climate Action Day. Nothing can be more important in the times in which we live. These are clearly difficult times. Our eyes are still very much focused on the pandemic that has fundamentally disrupted our ways of living, our thinking about the world, our behaviors. But if there's one thing we've learned during this time, is that the future is always going to surprise us. Nobody knows better than you that climate change is going to disrupt our lives a lot more than this pandemic. And artificial intelligence creates so much more uncertainty. Think about education. We know how to educate second-class robots. People are very good at repeating what we told them. But what's going to make us human in a world in which the kind of things that are easy to teach and easy to test have also become easy to digitize, to automate? This world no longer rewards us just for what we know. Now Google knows everything. This world rewards us for what we can actually do with what we know. How do we mobilize our cognitive, social, and emotional resources to take action? And I know Climate Action Day is all about this. And then, of course, there are many other trends that shape the future of education, the world in which we live. In this world, it's not enough to prepare ourselves for the future we believe is most likely or the future that we like most. But we have to learn to imagine and to live with alternative futures. And the better we become at imagining, multiple futures, the better we're going to prepare for the future that eventually arrives. That is our role, to just think further, think beyond the horizon, see the forest among the trees. Preparing for that is always going to be a balancing act. A balancing act between fostering sustainability, keeping the world that we know, that we're familiar with, that we love and balance, and at the same time living in a structurally imbalanced world. Climate change is throwing this world off balance, badly off balance. Even if we stop that climate change today, we're going to live with the consequences of the decisions we took over hundreds of years. We've got to mitigate, we've got to adapt, we have to manage that. And education really is very, very central on both fronts, and particularly when it comes to issues like climate change that require from us to make better trade-offs between the present and the future. And better choices between situational values. I'm going to do whatever the current situation allows me to do. And sustainable values. That, that situation, the future and the present, next to each other. That help us to better align individual and collective well-being. That help us to see the whole, ensure that the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. Most obviously, education provides people with the scientific knowledge and skills that underpin a green economy, and that is very important. According to PISA, knowledge about the science of the environment was the single most important predictor for the environmental attitudes and also the environmental behavior of young people. Let's start with the knowledge, and that's sort of the easy part. Now, a good science education, probably is one of the best investments we can make into the future of this planet. People belittle that often. They say that's technical knowledge, but it's not true. Understanding the science will help us engage with facts and figures, distinguish fact from opinion. It will help build the green jobs, the technological transformation. We need to help also citizens to think more like scientists. Can you understand design and experiment? Can you distinguish questions that are scientifically investigable from those that are not? Can you see the connections between fields of knowledge? Can you understand cause and effect? Can you connect the dots where the next big innovation is going to come from? During these months of the pandemic, we all felt the powerful forces of science and Mother Nature. No? Those who remained ignorant of science and gave precedence to, popular beliefs, ideologies, or politics, they paid a very steep price for this. No? You cannot sweet talk Mother Nature, as Tom Friedman always says. No? You cannot spin Mother Nature. Mother Nature is always going to follow the dictates of science. And that's why it's so important that we help the next generation really understand those principles of science. That's so central if we want to save this planet. Look at environmental awareness and optimism among 15-year-olds, for which our PISA survey provides some data. As you can see, on average across OECD countries, 7 out of 10 students know something about the consequences of clearing forests. And 2/3 have a basic understanding of the increase of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Look at environmental optimism here in red. Less than 20% of 15-year-olds believe that things like water shortage, air pollution, or the extinction of plants and animals is going to get better over the next 20 years. And actually, both awareness and optimism have been fairly constant over time. Except in the area of greenhouse gases, where you can see a clear rise in awareness between 2006 and 2015. I mark that here with the little black arrows. Most of the other dimensions have been fairly constant. So, what drives that optimism? We did not see much of a difference in environmental optimism between students with an interest in science or career ambitions in science and those that did not have that interest or career ambitions. It's not just, what gets you excited. Optimism is more. Students from privileged backgrounds and girls were less optimistic. But most importantly, here you see the long bar. Students who scored highly on the PISA science test were a lot less optimistic that the environment is going to get better. Now you can say, okay, let's teach less science and students are going to see a brighter future. Well, but of course, what those data mean is that students who knew more about the science of the environment had a much more realistic appreciation of the challenges involved in addressing climate change. Students with poorer science knowledge or those from disadvantaged backgrounds often thought, some magical politician is going to sort all of this out. Why do I need to change my behavior? Understanding nature makes us a much more realistic observer and gives us a much deeper, better understanding of the world and the consequences. What's also important is that science knowledge and interest are great predictors for greater environmental awareness. What you know provides a frame for your awareness. And by the way, school is by far the most prominent source of environmental awareness among young people. Now, the media and family, according to our data, come far behind that. So that's, again, why building strong foundations in science is so important. But, it's not enough. Actually, look at this. At the surface, the sustainability agenda has sort of made it into school curricula. Among OECD countries, close to 90% of school leaders say they have a formal school curriculum that deals with climate change and global warming. And it's even true for issues like, poverty, migration. On the surface, it seems our schools are dealing with this already. But things look different when you look at this through the lens of students. In our latest PISA survey, over 3/4 of 15-year-olds said that the climate agenda is important, is urgent to them. And they think of themselves as world citizens. But when we ask them, do you feel you can do something about this? Or do you think what you do matters for people in other places? The bars get much shorter now. And that's really the crux of education today. We have made young people passive consumers of prefabricated educational content. But we do not do enough to help them mobilize their cognitive, social, and emotional resources to take action. I hope on Climate Action Day, you take this to heart. It's not about, broadcasting more stuff to young people. It is about giving them that empowerment to mobilize, to take action, to put things together. It's that sense of agency that is so crucial. Singaporean and Korean students are doing an amazing job when they had to explain how carbon dioxide emissions affect global climate change. They had an amazing level of academic knowledge in a PISA. But just a minority of Singaporean and Korean 15-year-olds said they would choose certain products for ethical or environmental reason if they're a bit more expensive. That's the disconnect between what I know and what I do. Closing that gap is what Climate Action Day can be about. So it's not enough to teach students something. If we want to educate the next generation for their future rather than for our past, we need to help them build that agency, that capacity to bring together their cognitive, social, and emotional resources to actually transform, to change the world. And that co-agency, what I do is always connected with what other people do. And that collective agency, that makes the whole so much bigger than the sum of the parts. And I know that is what Climate Action Day is all about. Thank you again.